So we'll begin saying that we're all present. We'll begin the evening with a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act on 294 Rideau Street. I'll read the notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this personal hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding the collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning and Development. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. An exception to this rule is combined reports, which consolidates the public meeting and comprehensive reports. These applications are deemed by staff as straightforward and routine. The business practice has been in place for a number of years and is received by the applicants as efficient customer service and effective use of committee time. Please note that staff use discretion in determining if an application can be combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. Public meeting reports are provided to inform the public of all relevant information. Information gathered is then referred back to planning and development staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to planning committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the application to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not, if the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So, we'll move on to our first order of business, which is the public meeting aforementioned at 294 Rideau Street. And the floor is yours.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Yuko Leclerc. I'm a land use planner with FOTEN, and I'm here to present an application for zoning bylaw amendment at 294 Rideau Street on behalf of Jordan McGregor. The purpose of this application is to facilitate a severance. So the existing property would be severed and divided into two, and each property would be developed with a single attached dwelling and a secondary suite in the basement. So I'll start by speaking a little bit about the context of the area, and I'm going to try and use my mouse to the best of my ability here. It's a little hand up there. So the subject site is in the Inner Harbor neighborhood at the northwest corner of James and Rideau Streets. It's a generally residential area, but there is a bit of a mix. The immediate vicinity around the site is residential with building heights of 1 to 2.5 stories, although there are a few 3-story buildings in the area, and I'll show you a couple in a moment. There's also quite a range of uses in a walking distance and in a slightly longer walking distance to the subject site. So Cataraqui Street, just at the corner There's a veterinary clinic and some commercial use there. Moving eastward on Cataraqui Street, there are quite a few more commercial uses. The woolen mill. West on Cataraqui Street, there's another retail use. And then on Montreal Street on the west, just 2 blocks over, there's quite a few residential uses, but commercial uses, community facilities and services. Moving north on Montreal Street, north of McGaffin Park, there are some industrial and employment uses as well. And this is also an area with a lot of open space. There's 2 parks you can see just showing up on to the north of the site. Baseball diamonds, there's also Caton's Park up here just to the north, Doug Fleur Park down here, and there's another park to the south just across from Rideau Crest called Riverview Park. So there's the combination of active and passive parks in the area. Moving a little bit closer to the subject site, there is currently a 1.5-story house on the property, a detached dwelling. I think it might actually just be 1 story, and there's a fairly large detached garage. And this is where I'll start talking a little bit more about the neighborhood character and the buildings in the immediate vicinity. So I mentioned that there's some 3 stories. There aren't a lot, but there's a fairly substantial 3-story apartment building right down here, just to the southeast of the site on Rideau Street. And then on Cataraqui Street, just down the way a bit, there's a 3-story rear addition to a house. But generally in the immediate vicinity of the subject property, and I'll show you some examples, the houses are singles and semis, 1 to 2.5 stories. So just to the west of the site on James Street, there's a 2-story and then a 1-story. That's the image on the top. The image to the bottom is just across the street on James Street. Again, 1 and 2-story houses. There's a duplex that's kind of tucked in behind the tree a little further west. On the other side of Rideau Street, again, a mix of 1 and 2-story dwellings, residential, single detached for the most part. But just to the north of the site, there's a semi-detached dwelling. It's a 2-story house. And it's also zoned to allow a group home use. This is that apartment building I was talking about earlier, that 3-story. So what I'm trying to get across here is that this is an area with a diverse mix of built forms. The lot fabric is also quite diverse. There are some fairly small lots and there's some fairly large lots and there's kind of everything in between. A lot of variety, a lot of different built forms and densities. So what's proposed for the site? So this image here is kind of trying to highlight the different uses on the property, on the proposed properties rather. So each lot would be about 262 square meters in area. They would have equal frontages of about 15.7 meters on James Street. They would also both be accessed from James Street. If I can use my mouse again here. So the idea here would be to allow tandem parking to make the most efficient use of the site. Side-by-side parking just isn't going to work. The site's just not large enough to allow that, but it can accommodate 2 parking spaces in a tandem configuration, so that's what's being proposed in a shared driveway to, again, maximize efficiency. The primary unit would be accessed from this front porch, accessed from James Street. And would have access to some amenity area and some balconies, and I'll explain those in a moment. Before I get to that, though, the secondary suite would also be accessed from James Street in a walkout, kind of a walkout feature the door of which would be underneath the front porch. And that secondary suite would have a walkout access to this rear dedicated patio area, kind of showed in this beige color. So I've been referring to this as a 2.5-story building. It would be a 2.5-story with a raised basement so that it wouldn't be a cellar. There would be some adequate roof space for that basement unit in particular. And that would also allow this walkout function and this rear yard patio space, which would be a dedicated amenity area for the basement suite. The main unit would have a balcony on the main floor, which would be approximately the same area as the patio, almost exactly the same area. And then on the second floor, there would be another balcony, a little bit smaller, a little bit shallower, that would provide a little bit more amenity area and both balconies would have privacy screening to about 5 feet in height to minimize the overlook on neighbors, and vice versa to have some privacy for the users of the balconies. The idea of having different depths is to provide a little bit of articulation in the massing, especially when viewed from a side. Just a couple of renderings of the building. You can see, I don't know how clearly it is up here, but how the walkout entries would work. So there would be windows facing onto the street, and the unit would be accessed from underneath the porch here. The main unit would have access over here, and then the other unit. So the lots would effectively be mirrored the way that the houses are proposed to be built. moving on to a little bit of the policy framework here. This is a property that's in a housing district. Housing districts are generally proposed or generally intended to remain stable, but accommodate some degree of infill and intensification. There is a goal in the official plan that 40% of new residential development occur through intensification, and this type of intensification that's compatible is in line with that. The designation, the land use designation for the property is residential. It allows a broad range of residential uses, including single detached dwellings and secondary suites. Again, encourages intensification. I want to note that the official plan land use designation outside of secondary plans, so for most of the city, doesn't really differentiate between low, medium, and high density. It provides a broad residential density and then provides criteria for where medium and higher density uses are appropriate. This property and this proposed development crosses that threshold into medium density, and the built form of a secondary suite is also contemplated in the official plan as a medium density, and it meets the tests for a medium density use. It's why it's an appropriate use in this location. Speaking on the zoning, the subject site is in the zoning bylaw 8499. That's the old city bylaw. It's zoned A, which is a 1 and 2 family dwelling zone. It's a fairly broad zone that allows single detached dwellings, semi-detached, and duplexes, but it doesn't explicitly allow secondary suites. So the intention here would be to allow a single detached dwelling and to allow a secondary suite as a specific use. And the important difference between a secondary suite, a single detached dwelling with a secondary suite and a duplex is that a secondary suite has some limitations that are imposed through the city's secondary suite guidelines. So a secondary suite has to be 90 square meters in area or smaller, and it can't be more than 40% of the area of the main unit. So in that way, it restricts the intensity of that residential use. The A zone does have a required minimum lot area, and my next slide, I'll speak a little bit more about the reliefs that are proposed. So there are a few reliefs that are required in order to make this development happen. The current zoning bylaw requires 370 square meters per unit for lot area. There's a number of front and rear yard setbacks that can't be met by the proposal. And the idea here is that by having the house a little bit closer to the road, it allows a little bit more rear yard amenity space. By allowing some relief in the yard projections of the balconies, it allows those balconies to provide more amenity area. The tandem parking, I spoke about that a little bit earlier. That's really a functionality site and a way of using the site more efficiently and providing that parking option for the property. This is also a situation where there's a bit of a technicality. The lot is currently a corner lot, and as a result of the future severance, one of the lots will remain a corner lot. Zoning bylaw is a little bit inconsistent in the way that it deals with corner lots, so this amendment would normalize the way that the setbacks are proposed for the property, and would also incorporate a site triangle for safety. So the engineering department has asked that a site triangle be incorporated in the zoning for the corner lot, and that would be reflected in the zoning bylaw amendment. So to wrap up, this is a proposal that's consistent with the PPS, the provincial policy statement. It conforms to the strategic direction and the official plan, so direction on intensification, but also on the functional needs and compatibility. It's consistent with the official plan designation. Secondary suites are also a form of affordable housing, so this contributes to that supply for the city. It's an amendment. The zoning bylaw amendment would allow all of this, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there will be, following the zoning bylaw amendment process, a consent to sever the property into 2. So with that, I welcome any questions or comments through Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And would staff like to speak to this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the notice of the application accordance with the Planning Act with 2 signs posted on both the frontages of the property 20 days in advance of the meeting, and notices sent by mail to 82 properties within 120 meters. And to date, there's been no written comments or phone or counter inquiries.
So we won't hear anybody until it's passed, right? That's the way it works. Thank you very much. Quick question. I noticed a mention of site plan. So that will be incorporated in the zoning. There won't be a separate site plan that takes place at this location?
Their control isn't required for this application, as the number of units is below the threshold in the site plan control bylaw.
In condition of that, then we'll accept comments regarding site plan at this meeting as well, not just land use zoning. So, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Okay, we'll move to the public. Any public comments? Seeing none? I'll ask for a mover and a sec. Oh, that isn't happening on this file. So I do have another question. Sorry. It's been a long day already. The tandem parking, I'm always a little troubled by the idea of tandem parking and how difficult that is operationally. Would you or the planners like to comment on that and what the result of that will be? If somebody parks and blocks me in and they go to walk their dog to the park, I'm stuck there till they come back.
So
Could you comment on that?
through you, Mr. Chair, a secondary suite is a situation that's more amenable to tandem parking, because the idea is that one of the people residing there is the owner and the other is a tenant, so they have a kind of a relationship, lease-lessee relationship. So there's an opportunity there between the landowner and the tenant to work out how they'll make the tandem parking situation work. Yes, there are situations where it can be problematic, but the idea is that the individuals will communicate and make it work for one another so that they don't block one another in.
And just a quick comment for some of the relief that you've been asking about. I know that neighborhood fairly well because my daughter owns a home just down the road on Rideau. There aren't a lot of uniform, if I remember rightly, uniform kind of front yard setbacks like there is in suburbia. So, if I recall rightly, the side yard and the front yard relief on the setback, there are examples along the street where those are indeed the common condition in that neighborhood. Is that accurate?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, the idea of the proposed front yard setback is that in this case, it's consistent with what is found in the area. So the property immediately to the west is a little bit closer to the front lot line than the proposed development. And then the property that's further west from that one is a little bit farther. So there's some variation in the distances between houses and front lot lines. In this case, the proposed relief is consistent with the range that's found in the neighborhood for the main wall of the dwelling. The front porch or the front stair going down into the basement is a little bit closer than is otherwise generally permitted in the area, but it would be kind of a below grade situation. And it's more of a technicality that it's incorporated in the zoning as a front yard setback rather than as a projection.
Thank you. And I see no relief requested for amenity space, so you are meeting the required amenity space. Is that accurate?
That's right. So the amenity area, the landscaped open space, this is not a site that triggers the 18.5 square meter requirement. It's not a sufficiently higher density development to require that, but it does have a 30% landscaped open space requirement, and that is met by the proposal.
Great. And thank you. My final comment, and it's site plan related. I guess I set that up by saying we can ask site plan questions. Can you go back to the picture that showed the rendering of the proposal? Yeah. Is that gray? Is that kind of gray siding board that more and more developers are using, or is that just a rendering? This
kind of the black, kind of the darker gray? No, I think the applicant right now is looking at a painted stucco as is kind of the form that he's thinking of.
Good, that's the right answer. That's much nicer than the only thing uglier than vinyl siding is that dark gray board that some developers are using these days. And so, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, we will move along. And I promise to get you out of here soon. So,
thank you.
I want to thank staff. I brought it up before, and I noticed that all of our applications received in process now have the planners' names attached to them so the public can contact the appropriate people. There we are. It's only one page, so I missed it. We have two orders of business. I'd like approval of the agenda, mover and seconder. Thank you, thank you. Osanek and Turner. And all those in favor? Carried. Confirmation of minutes from April 5th. Mover, thank you, Councillor Turner. And Councillor Oosterhoff just seconded that, whether he knows it or not. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Yes, Councillor Oosterhoff.
Gary Osterhoff of the Council of the City of Kingston, or on the Planning Committee, should I say, declare my pecuniary interest in the matter of zoning bylaw amendment for 143 Beverly Street, as I have an association with the applicant.
Thank you very much. We have no delegations. We have no briefings. We'll move on to business. And the portion, there we go. The portion of the meeting is open to the public. The city has initiated a new process in which members of the public will have the opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on comprehensive reports presented before the Planning Committee. Those wishing to provide oral comments at this meeting will be invited to do so. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Thank you. So actually both A and B are referenced to the same comprehensive report. And the first was for information purposes only. Are there any questions from or comments from the committee? Oh, okay. I just got a nudge that staff would like to speak to this. If you would, that would be great. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Planning Committee staff, and members of the public. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application for 143 Beverly Street to permit a second unit. A public meeting was held on March 22nd, and the committee deferred the comprehensive report and recommendations so that staff would have the opportunity to review the public comments received at the meeting and provide a response. A supplementary report has been prepared for your consideration. The purpose and effect of the application is to facilitate a zoning bylaw amendment application to permit the creation of a second unit on the site. The proposal involves the construction of a 24 square meter, one-story rear addition as well. With regards to the location of the subject property, it is located within the Alwington neighborhood of the city and is located south of Union Street on the east side of Beverly Street. With regards to the surrounding area, it should be noted that there are 2-unit dwellings along Beverly Street, as noted in the yellow stars, as you see in the image before you. As well, there are triplexes in the surrounding area as well along Union Street and Beverly Street at the corner on the southwest corner. With regards to the site itself, this is a photo of 143 Beverly Street. It is a 2.5-story dwelling. It's a single-family dwelling, and a building permit was issued for renovations for the single-family dwelling only, and also with regards to the rear addition. Again, this is just for the single-family dwelling only and not for the second unit. This is a photo showing the rear of the subject property. There is an existing elevated deck on the property, and right now, as it stands, there is overlook as a result of this deck. The rear addition will improve the situation in terms of privacy. And also, it also should be noted that there is an adjacent residence on the property as well. And the rear addition to this location at 143 Beverly Street is scaled back further from there. This shows the site plan of the property, further showing the proposal. As seen on this plan, the rear addition is slightly smaller in scale than the adjacent residence. With regards to the proposal, it should be noted that there's also 2 parking spaces at the rear, which will be one for the main unit and one for the second unit. And this is a photo showing this existing streetscape along Beverly Street. The provincial policy statement outlines matters of provincial interest with regards to land use planning. So the sections that are applicable to this application are the following: to accommodate an appropriate range and mix of residential uses, which include second units, affordable housing, and housing for older persons. Also, land use patterns within settlement areas shall be based on densities and a mix of land uses which are appropriate for and efficiently use the infrastructure and public service facilities which are planned or available, and avoid the need for unjustified or uneconomical expansion. Also, planning authorities shall identify appropriate locations and promote opportunities for intensification, redevelopment to accommodate and account for existing building stock in areas, including brownfield sites, also taking into consideration availability of suitable existing and planned infrastructure and public services for future needs, and also promoting densities for new housing which efficiently use land, resources, and infrastructure and public service facilities. The subject property is located within the residential designation within the official plan, which permits single, detached, semis, triplexes, and apartments. Official plan also notes adverse effects with regards to proposed development. With regards to shadowing for this development, the rear addition will not cause any shadowing effects. With regards to the loss of privacy, the situation will be improved with the loss of the deck and the inclusion of the new rear addition. There will be no issues in terms of noise, odor, or dust, or vibration until after construction has been completed. There will be no increased or uncomfortable wind speed, and there will be no issues with respect to environmental degradation. With regards to the level of traffic, there are transit spots, about 3 of them along Union Street. And with regard to diminished servicing levels because of social or physical infrastructure necessary to support a use or area, a stormwater management brief and also a grading plan was submitted. Through the technical review, there were no issues in terms of stormwater management or grading or drainage. With respect to the ability to enjoy a property or normal amenity associated with the proposed development with regards to safety and access, from the site plan, it does show appropriate parking. There is sufficient amenity space for this proposed development, and each unit will be self-contained with a kitchen, amenity space indoors, and appropriate number of bedrooms. With regards to visual intrusion that disrupts the streetscape, building, or cultural heritage resource, the rear addition will not cause any adverse impact with regards to the character of the existing streetscape along Beverly Street. With regards to architectural incompatibility in terms of scale, style, massing, and color, the rear addition will be compatible with the existing 2.5-story stucco building. With regards to significant views or cultural heritage resources, there will be no impact as a result of this proposed development. With regards to the zoning bylaw 8499, the subject property is located within the A zone, which permits 1-family and 2-family dwellings. And this is a list of the zoning provisions. So for this development, there is only one performance standard that the applicant is seeking relief from, and that is the minimum lot area. 370 square meters is required per dwelling unit for a total of 740 square meters. The proposal is sitting at 482 square meters, and it's deficient of 258 square meters. So with regards to minimum side yard, minimum rear yard, maximum lot coverage, maximum building height, as well as maximum residential building depth, maximum floor space index, landscape open space, residential parking, and parking area. All of these provisions of zoning bylaw 8499 of the A zone will be upheld. So again, this is the proposed development. We have the rear addition at the back. The second unit will be accessed from the front, and the main unit will also be accessed from the front of Beverly Street as well. There are 2 parking spaces at the back, and there is a hammerhead space located there as well, which will allow for safe access, parking cars to and getting out of the subject property. This is showing the main floor. So right now, the existing dwelling has 7 bedrooms. So it will be a total of 10 bedrooms for the entire building. For the main floor, there are 4 bedrooms. And for the second floor and the third floor, there will be 3 bedrooms on the second floor. And on the third floor, there will be 2 bedrooms. So the public comments that we've received, they are listed here. With regards to land use compatibility, the proposed development is reasonable and moderate in scale. With respect to compatibility and the surrounding area, as noted in my previous slides, there are 2 family dwellings along Beverly Street and triplexes along Union Street. The 1-story addition will not impact the streetscape, and the proposed rear addition will not result in intrusive overlook that the current deck currently provides. The applicant has provided confirmation that garbage storage and bicycle storage will be located at the rear of the dwelling and will be covered. And from a land use planning perspective, we cannot discriminate on the type of resident that will live in the dwelling. And with regards to concerns for rooming houses, a rooming house is whereby tenants provide compensation, and they are all under individual leases. In this case, the owner has provided confirmation that the 2-unit dwelling will not operate as a rooming house, and tenants within each unit will be under 1 single lease. So with respect to our recommendation, the proposed second unit is appropriate and adds to the range of built form and dwelling unit sizes available in the area, and that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment complies with the provincial policy statement and official plan and constitutes good land use planning, and we recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee before we open it up to the public? Seeing none, I just had one quick question. I noticed that we received a letter in our addeds in support of this. How many letters or contacts in total have we had on this file?
I believe it's approximately 11 or 12. 3 letters were received in support of the application.
And so 3 in support, 8 opposed. Is that accurate?
That is correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you very much. So we'll open it to the public. If any member of the public would like to speak to this file. Seeing none, we'll go back to the committee. And I will just comment quickly. The district councillor, Councillor Stroud, yesterday did submit to council a petition with 37 names opposed to this development. And that is on file and can be made available through the clerks. So, any further questions or comments? Is there a mover? Is there a shaker? Thank you. Councillor Turner, Councillor Osanek. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And so we'll move on to motions. Seeing none. Notices of motion. Seeing none. Other business. Seeing none. Correspondence. Any comments on correspondence received? Seeing none. Date and time of next meeting. The next meeting of the Planning Committee is scheduled for May 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Excellent. Motion to adjourn. So moved. Pick of the litter, everybody. All those in favor? Carried. What time is it? Who owes me a beer? 7:04. 7:04. You owe me a beer.